Okay, welcome to Parsons. This evening's event is jointly hosted by HML US and our new entity in Europe. I'm Alison Mears. I'm an architect, and I'm co-founder of HML US and HML EU. This evening, I'm honored to be joined by my colleague, Victoria Caubet, an architect, project manager of New Eco Ukraine, who is visiting especially for this project. Thanks, Victoria. She came to studio reviews this afternoon, which is why we're a little punchy, because we've been talking for 6 hours straight. And I wanted to thank all of the HML team for their hard work setting up this public event. And thank you to the students who were there this afternoon, and all of my colleagues who were there as critics, and my faculty colleague, Bless Yi, and to all of our collaborators. We began working with Victoria early last year as part of our work in HML's new EU bureau, when my colleague Leila Behat and I began a conversation with Victoria about rebuilding in Ukraine with products made from biomass. We all realized that a speculative project in Ukraine would be an amazing topic for a design studio project, with a particular emphasis on adaptive reuse and biogenic materials. Our collaborators include Professor Anna Pomazana from Kharkiv University and 3 of her architecture students, and the municipality of Kryvyi, and we thank them for their collaboration. I'll begin with a few slides setting the Ukrainian context. Then Victoria will describe her work with Neo Eco Ukraine. Then I'll explore some of the early student design work. We believe that this act of rebuilding offers the hope of a new home and a new Ukrainian future, that at this critical time in history. Not for you all on Zoom who know this, but for our local New York and US audiences, I wanted to give a short summary of Ukrainian geographic and historic backgrounds. Ukraine sits at the intersection of Europe and Russia, surrounded by Belarus, Poland, Romania, Moldova, and Slovakia, making the country of great national as well as international strategic importance. This is some history, right? We are all in this country at this moment challenged with history and geography. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukrainians have worked to reestablish their Ukrainian identity after Soviet control. The country suffered over 70 years, from 1917 to 1991, of oppressive Russification, including the Holodomor famine of 1932 to 1933. A disaster that intentionally caused the deaths of 4 to 5 million Ukrainians. From 1991 to 2014, with the Maidan Revolution, Ukraine worked to overthrow the influence of Russian control in Ukraine. In 2014, the Ukrainian parliament voted to remove Kremlin-friendly ex-president Yanukovych. At this time, Russia moved to occupy and then annexed Crimea, and armed pro-Russian separatists seized government buildings and proclaimed the independent states of Donetsk and Luhansk, sparking the Donbas War. On the 24th of February, 2022, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine marked a critical phase in Ukraine's ongoing fight for sovereignty and territorial integrity. Before the war, Ukraine was a key supplier of iron ore to Europe, with a significant share of the continent's iron ore imports coming from Ukrainian mines, historically exporting much of its iron ore to the EU. Russia invaded Ukraine, as I said, in February 22, and for 3 years, Ukraine has fought to retain its sovereign territory. So this is the context of our project. And now over to Victoria.
Thank you. Okay, you can see, okay. So hello everyone. I just wanted to thank you for inviting me again, and thank you for taking part in this studio for the students. It's really meaningful for the municipality and the people in the IDP in Ukraine. They're really excited about this project. Um, I'm excited today to be here to share the journey of the Zeleny High School reconstruction project in Ukraine. That I'm the project manager of this project. Sorry for them. This is a 2.7 million project funded by the European and Taiwanese sources through the CPVA, a Lithuanian agency. So think of this project as a bridge between international support and local resilience. As I was saying, the project partners are the CPVA, the funding agency, the Zeleny High community, and NeoEco Ukraine, which I represent today. I joined NeoEco Ukraine in May 2024, and I will present you my research. It's been quite an adventure, and I'm really eager to show you what we are intending to do. So first, a little bit of background. My background is a blend of architecture and hands-on masonry, particularly with clay. I've been working with this material since 2010, discovering the beauty of vernacular building. I'm also a big believer in Cedric Price anticipatory architecture, designing for resilience and avoiding obsolescence of buildings. You'll see here example of project focusing on flexible, reusable space made with reusable materials and fixings. My coworkers and I repurpose many times materials from old farms, like century-old oak beams, stones, tiles, and bricks to rebuild a wattle and daub house. It's very important to put people in the heart of the design and always imagine them inside the process. On the project that you can see on the bottom right, we were reusing everything. We were using nails. We were like bending nails to make them straight. And we're even reusing frying oil to fuel our old trucks from the 70s. Then I had a transformative experience at BC Materials in Belgium. They're pioneers in turning excavation waste into building materials, and they're a true beacon of circularity. My masonry experience was very valuable for prototyping robust construction materials. We worked on developing earth screeds without cement, so that's the second image. We worked on developing circular facing blocks for the Design Museum of Ghent. And we also worked on scaling up earth block production, going from 700 blocks a day to 70,000 blocks a day. So this experience also allowed me to dive into material science. So part of my missions there in BC Materials was to do professional training. And just before the full-scale invasion, actually like 1 week before, I was on the ground training Ukrainian contractors in earth renders. It was a critical time, and it made me want to support the Ukrainian people. Now I will talk about the situation in Ukraine. So the scale of destruction is immense. The World Bank estimates put reconstruction costs at 542 billion, 3 times Ukraine's 2024 GDP. To put that in perspective, the LA fires that causes $250 billion of damage are less than 1% of USA total GDP, 0.92% of USA GDP to rebuild. We're facing mountains of rubble. This raises a crucial question: how do we rebuild responsibly? Construction is a major contributor to global warming, with concrete alone accounting for 10% of global warming emissions. In Ukraine, we have an opportunity to build back better using circular resources. So this is the opportunity to turn devastation into innovation. So I joined, NeoEco invited me to join them to rebuild the school in Zeleny High. And I thought that was a very interesting project because they had their pilot project in Hostomel, a site of terrible war crimes, where they turned 4 buildings into aggregates to rebuild. They also have a wider approach where because they're specializing in circular resources and circular materials and developing circular materials, but they're also integrating social aspects. And here we have a picture of veterans that are following some recovering sites. So they're dismantling and sorting rubble, and it's like it's kind of therapeutic for them to be working as veterans together in groups and to be in team and to be active. So a little bit of context of the Zeleny village. So the Mykolaiv Oblast is in the south of Ukraine. It's on the Black Sea. It's on the shore of the Black Sea. It's about 30 miles from Kherson, which is a city which is the front line. Mykolaiv is set in a steppe landscape, about 30 kilometers from the sea and 60 kilometers from Odessa. So I'll show you a little bit of the landscape and the region. Here you can see the kind of landscape, the kind of atmosphere in Mykolaiv. It's quite green. There is a Stalinist type of building here and more of a Khrushchev area housing. Do you hear me well? Yeah. Then we have the Tiligul estuary. You can find a lot of shells in the region. They actually produce this stone. It's a limestone where you can still see the shells in it. And this is the steppe, the steppe type of landscape. So it's very flat, and that's where Ukraine gets the reputation of being the breadbasket of Europe. So now let's focus on Zeleny High. So the village of Zeleny High is located between Mykolaiv and Kherson, the front line. The village is, so that's an interesting fact about the village is that it was a Soviet state tractor farm funded in the 30s under the name of Section 4. Some of the villagers were forcibly displaced after World War II from the forested area bordering Poland. The name Zeleny High means green grove. It's a poignant reminder of the displaced villagers' home. The community, the community is incredibly resistant, and well, they faced. Yes, sorry, I'm confused. So here is the typical typology of the village. Like it's one house, like low housing village. The community is incredibly resistant. They faced military attacks, loss, and years without in-person schooling, 5 years. But they're active, creative, and passionate about rebuilding. They've installed solar panel, restored water access, and are demining the area. The front line, like when they were at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, Russian army went all over Mykolaiv, but they didn't manage to get into Mykolaiv. They went north of the oblasts, and then they were repelled back to Kherson, back to the other side of the Dnipro River, which is some natural border formalizing the front line. They're also they're very close to their environment, and they're interested in using local bio-based material like straw, reed, and clay. The head of the village told me stories of their community dances, festivals before the war, and that's the spirit we're trying to rebuild. The school history followed a little bit the development of the settlement. It was first built after the war, and then it evolved into a gymnasium in the 80s. So gymnasium is like high school, which was a typical Soviet concrete building. So that's the plan of the site. On March 13, 2022, it was hit by two 500 rockets, causing tragic casualties, including the head of the school and the head of the village. The basement, however, saved over 60 lives. So we want to rebuild this school, which will be a crucial step for the recovery of the village and the person who who were related to these casualties, and then the trauma of these people who were in the basement also. So I wanted to address the site and look at the resources that we can find in the area to rebuild. So the first step to addressing the demolition was to assess the demolition waste. So we aim the building was demolished by the military organization and the villagers, and the waste, the rubble was stacked on the site on the village, but it's all mixed. So we aim to sort it, recycle iron, crush concrete, and safely dispose of asbestos. Just for your information, asbestos was legal in Ukraine up until 2023. The site now is very flat like this after the demolition. So the flat is like this, and they always have these nice trees. On the right side, we wanted to repurpose the concrete slabs, but unfortunately, they're not available. They were already given to the military organization, so we will not be able to reuse them. So we're trying to see how we can go beyond just the rubble and see what else we can repurpose. So we also want to repurpose the foundation of the basement to use them as like the first layer of the new foundation for the school. So part of my research was to see how many sustainable material manufacturers there were in Ukraine. But there is the industry is very damaged in Mykolaiv, and I think it's an opportunity. Like the reconstruction is also the opportunity to develop local regional specialization, because the country has a lot of resources, very diverse, very good materials, and the way it was developed was very dependent to Russian industries and building materials. So at the moment, they are also big producers, but at the moment there are some materials missing. Just to show you a little bit here, in the Mykolaiv, so if you see the circle, so this is the 100 kilometer around the Zeleny High School. And the only manufacturer we have is a concrete plant. We see that on the western part, it's the western part and the eastern part were really rich. The ground were really rich in stones, clay, coal, and so on. But it was preferred to the Donbass. Was a very industrial place. Now most of the industries are not accessible. So the western part is more of regional natural spaces, and currently the industrializing this part, which was natural, and they kind of have to damage the landscape there, which is a shame, because to answer the demand of materials of Ukraine. There are challenges for construction, like the lack of glass. There is no production of glass in Ukraine. And for example, the mineral wool production, it's not enough. I also, so in the shops also, I was looking for local cement or local products, and a lot of products are coming from Poland. So they have now to import lots. So I thought that with Ukraine being the big producer of grains and bio-based material, I thought that the fact that there was a lack of mineral wool, we could maybe replace the production of very carbon-intensive and polluting materials, which is the mineral wool, by bio-based insulation for the school. However, I made a study of all the norms that I have to comply to for the school. And at the moment, the installation materials for the reconstruction has to be non-combustible, which is the maximum level of for the fire safety. But it's only one norm. All of the norm could, because the bio-based materials, we managed to have a category of, sorry, this is Ukrainian norm, is G1. G4 being very flammable, G1 being very not flammable. So it's a good, like hempcrete is G1, straw is G1, but they want to have there is just one norm that is preventing us from using it. So I tried to lobby, but changing norms. Then I made a more local material research, and I found out that there was a lot of reed, very good reed. This is a very good material for insulation. We had also the rubble from the sites. There is production of sunflower all around the village, so we can use the pith of the sunflower to insulate acoustical plaster. There is also straw that we could use, and there was an excavation site, so I could assess the clay. So this was the kind of like on-site material research. So you can see the black part of of this excavation is this let me check it in, Chernozem. So which is the very fertile black soil that allows for this very big production of agriculture. So that I was making some field tests. So when you are working with earth materials, you can go on site, and there's a couple of there's actually like 3 or 4 little tests you can make like this to assess what type of clay you have, if it's suitable for construction. And this clay was absolutely beautiful and very suitable for construction after this little test. Here I wanted to show the bio-based resource, so sunflower and reed, and then I wanted to show you what we can do with straw panel. So for now, we will not be able to use it, but I still think it's important to talk about it. So I think I advise everybody who is starting a construction site or who is starting a project to ask to the local person, where is the oldest house? So this is what I did. And I asked them, where was the oldest house of the village? And they showed me this so this half-buried earth house, which is very interesting. So there is some parts that it's made with adobe blocks, fibered with straw. We can see also that the roof is like the lattice is made with reed. We can also see that there is different layers of render, and I suspect that the thinner render of the earth is there is an additive of horse manure, and then there is the lime wash or the lime. So that's like every resource here is available. You can build with these resources. You can even have a roof with the reed. So I will go quickly on the architectural project. If you have questions about the architectural project, you can ask me later or during the questions, because I don't want to take too much time for the presentation. So our architects are Martin Duplantier Architects. So it's a French architect who started to work in Ukraine in 2015. And at the beginning of the war, he decided to open an agency in Lviv. So the agency is actually run by Ukrainian architects. And it's a real pleasure working with them. And they're very professional, and we choose them because they were also very concerned about material, and reusing concrete material and so on. This is their landscape master plan. We can note that there is a ditch system, and they're really like creating a garden to protect to create a nice environment around the school. This is the bomb shelter. So now the Ukrainian law, when you're rebuilding a school, you have to build it with a dual purpose shelter. Even in case of times of peace, you will be able to use the space for community activities. So here is the plan. We are using the old outline of the old basement. So we're not pouring too much new concrete. We're not digging new excavation. We're just avoiding to, to do more, to dig out new trees, the trees and so on. So this is the state of the bomb shelter, the basement that protected the 60 people. And also they protect the community for the whole time of the occupation. They were going there every time there was an air raid. So this is the plan. So to fasten to have a quicker process of reconstruction, we want to rebuild with modular construction. So this is why we have a 4x4 meter grid. You can see that we try to keep together the primary school together. We have on the top of the plan, we have like the kitchen. One of the strong aspects of the project is this in the center. This is a flight of stairs that is serving the second floor, second floor, yeah. And then we have assembly hall combined with the sport hall. An important aspect of the project was the transparency. So because the Soviet school were very dark with a lot of corridors, and the architects are trying to open the space and create more lights for the new school. So these are some renders. We are still in the conceptual design phase, which is the first phase of the project. So the project will evolve. We can note that there is a lot of windows, which is actually scaring the parents of the school children. So I guess there will be some evolutions, and the project will have less windows. So another aspect of the project, which is important for us, is the community resilience. So we have been, well, I'm lost in my. So we have been organizing workshop series with the children, because they've not been to school for 5 years, I was telling you, because of the 2 years of COVID and then the 3 years of the war. So they kind of desocialized. So we are organizing those moments of workshops to have them together. And the participants, the children who are participating are very creative, very motivated, very hands-on. So it's very exciting moments when we have it. And we aim to organize this workshop in the idea of co-designing a mural. So that's interesting. And for the students that were here today, we want to create a local decor. And in the beginning, I wanted to do Vyshavanka, and then I discovered that the Ukrainian culture is a lot more, there is a lot more than Vyshavanka. There is a lot of local traditions and local, so we are inviting local architects, local artists, local person from the museum, from cultural life to come and to tell us more about the history of Mykolaiv, the history of the villages, the history of the Soviet farming, and we aim to create together with the children this mural that will be in the school. So thank you so much for your attention, and now I will leave the space to Alison.
Thank you, Victoria. That was great. We had a whole conversation this afternoon about textiles in Ukraine and pattern making, right? So you'll see some of that we haven't revised, what we had talked about in the student work, but yeah. So, so Bless Yi and I teach studio in the spring. It often has a social, political perspective. We've looked at migration, homelessness, and this year we're considering how architectural explorations can respond to the devastation wrought by military invasion by Russia in Ukraine. 3 years ago, two students, Ukrainian Artem Chuliak, are you here, Artem? No? And Brooke Maru proposed new housing in Bucha just after the brutal invasion began in Ukraine. Through that project, we explored many of the issues we bring into this semester's project. For students, it's an important part of their education to understand that building and architecture never occurs in a neutral context. For our partners in Kiriviri, it can mean access to new approaches to renovating and rebuilding aging or building a range of new housing. Our work is informed from multiple Ukrainian perspectives. So the sites are in Kiriviri, which is a city indicated by the red circle and 60 kilometers from the front line. The city was established in the 17th century. With the discovery of iron ore by the French in the 1880s, it became an important industrial city. And more recently was the birthplace of Volodymyr Zelensky, who you may have heard of. Kiriviri is known as the steel heart of Ukraine. In 1919, Ukraine was incorporated by the Russians into the Soviet Union and was developed as a factory mining city according to Soviet urban and political planning. And because it's so close to the front line, it's routinely attacked. I think the latest attacks in the city were just over a week ago. As a US school, it was imperative that we began our work from a Ukrainian perspective and began the project both in conversation with Victoria and Anna, with 3 Ukrainian students from Kharkiv School of Architecture. Before the studio began, Victoria and Anna bravely traveled to Kiriviri to meet with the municipality and document the 8 local buildings that are the focus of the studio, a critical and important part of the process, and we thank them for that going into the war zone. There were many insights shared by the students, and their lives mirrored others in Ukraine. Displacement, exploring their Ukrainian identity, a desire to rebuild community, and their architectural and historic understanding of the cities and buildings of Ukraine. We were also interested in how they spoke about their homes and the importance of the natural environment. They shared important insights into their lives that were still influenced by the remnants of Soviet planning and Soviet education, for example. Their work is recorded as an important part of our foundational research. We're incredibly grateful for their generosity and wisdom, and their insights have been incorporated into the student work. The city of Kiriviri is flanked on either side by large open quarries, piles of mining debris, and tailings ponds. Beyond the city are the important agricultural fields, the breadbasket of Ukraine and of Europe. The large open quarries, the piles of mining debris and tailings ponds have an enormous negative environmental impact on the city, and especially its workers and residents, polluting the city, the water, the air, and the soil. So they are facing multiple challenges in this city. Housing is a critical need across Ukraine and also in Kiriviri because of the Russian war and the displacement of millions of Ukrainians. Kiriviri was planned and developed during the Soviet period, described as a Sotsgorod towns and designed to reflect socialist Soviet values to support industrial growth, often located near factories or industrial complexes. At the scale of the neighborhood, the my Ukrainian is appalling, the micro-rayon were the functional, self-contained neighborhoods, including essential services like schools, shops, medical facilities, and green spaces, all designed to be within walking distance of the residential areas. All of our sites clearly embody this planning. In Ukraine, we can identify clear historic typologies, from traditional houses of wattle and daub walls with thatched roofs to the post-Soviet era. There are clear stylistic characteristics of each historic housing period. And this, for me, is quite phenomenal when we are working on these sites that have such clear historic roots. It's unusual for us in the US where there are quite clear delineations in our cities. And in the work that we're doing, this has kind of been a surprise for me. 2 of the buildings we're considering are from the Soviet classicist style from the late 1920s to the early 1950s, with high ceilings and thick walls, originally intended for the Soviet elite. But the majority of the buildings the students are exploring are from the Khrushchev-Brezhnev era. A Khrushchevka is a type of low-cost, mass-produced, five-story apartment building that was extensively constructed across the Soviet Union from the late 1950s to the early 1960s. This housing was designed for a 25-year design lifetime as a disposable home. The image on the left illustrates the kind of waterproofing problems at the concrete panel connections in the buildings now over 60 years old. And so these are the challenges that Ukrainian cities and actually cities all over the old Soviet countries are finding of what you do with this existing housing, this aging existing housing stock. So the Parsons students have spent the first part of the semester conducting this kind of site analysis of the city and the 8 sites, extracting information about existing buildings from original Ukrainian documents supplied by Victoria, and reviewing architectural precedent studies and the local insights from the Ukrainian students. These are the locations for the studio. 8 municipally controlled sites distributed along the 100-kilometer length of the city. This is an extraordinary city in its extent, this linear city that is flanked either side by industry and quarries and mines. Some of the buildings were originally designed as housing, others have been used for sanatoria, for offices and kindergartens. So the object of the studio is to adaptively reuse, restore, or demolish and rebuild social housing, reusing as much of the original buildings as possible. Where new materials are used, they must be either biogenic or earth products, grown or collected close to the site. This is obviously the most sustainable option to reduce the overall embodied carbon in rebuilding, and the most economical. As we know, the country and the municipality are really challenged in terms of their ability to access funds for the municipality. The buildings range from buildings 1 to 3 in need of some restoration to 4 to 5 that are major renovation to buildings, and buildings 6 to 8 that are difficult or impossible to reuse. We also acknowledge that the original buildings were built to support workers in the city, where their labor was considered to be more important than their humanity. We hope to address that imbalance in the ongoing design work of the semester. And so we're going to look at some of this early design work that we looked at this afternoon, right, Victoria? So Aidan explores buildings as living things, making a connection to the historic agricultural roots of Ukraine in this former administrative building. One of his adaptive reuse strategies for the existing classicist building is to insert a series of furniture assemblies. In this case, for a single IDP, internally displaced person, a bunk bed and a window box that efficiently creates a beautiful place for healing. Anshika's project explores how architecture serves as a medium for storytelling by redesigning Ukrainian housing to reflect resilience, identity, and cultural continuity in the face of a crisis informed by the Ukrainian students. She's created a furniture inventory from the existing building, so all of the items that she can identify from the survey photographs. And her apartment plans address new ways of living to create spaces that provide shelter, but also preserve cultural memory. Isabella explores planning interventions in the existing building that support intergenerational living and the creation of novel things like new porches as places of refuge for residents. Matteo and Emma's approach to this project is the adaptive reuse of the existing building, prioritizing light, space, and community engagement with minimal disruption. They aim to achieve this through components that are quickly fabricated and installed, recognizing the urgent need for housing solutions in Ukraine. By introducing a window-lined balcony system, they address the building's cramped and poorly insulated conditions by extending living spaces, increasing natural light, and improving air circulation, while also adding this critical layer of thermal insulation. None of these buildings are insulated. Recognizing the precarity of Ukraine's situation, they hope their building offers a system that can be universally applied to this Soviet style of building across Ukraine, as well as a happy home for the new residents. Oliver explores the efficiency and health of shared spaces through reused materials to support community interaction, transforming a sanatorium for mine workers. There were a lot of sanatoria through the city, into a multi-family community ranging from people living alone or in small groups. The new design expands a footprint through minor demolition and creates opportunities for residents to experience natural beauty. And also, I think he's going to have a new courtyard, as we discussed today, right, Victoria? Potentially, yeah. Rucher and Darren proposed demolition of their building because of structural problems. They explore how circular materials strategies can be used to repurpose a former kindergarten into a neighborhood healing center by utilizing accessible housing and family-oriented living spaces. They leverage adaptive reuse, some modular construction, a pattern that you will see in the students' design work that addresses this housing crisis as well as a cultural crisis. The team reviewed the existing building materials before demolition of the structurally compromised structure and documented materials for reuse, and they include the bricks, the gypsum plaster, and the autoclaved aerated concrete, the AAC, the lightweight prefabricated concrete building material, all identified as materials for reuse. In this proposal, material reuse can serve as both a practical and symbolic tool for rebuilding war-affected communities, creating a series of lower-scale houses and restorative environments for displaced and vulnerable people. Julia proposes gutting the building because it's structurally compromised, potentially, though this is a conversation, preserving the facade and enhancing its structural integrity. She also considers the urban context. The 6 buildings on the block, she's looking at the block as an urban kind of project, and you'll see that in those little diagrams on the right there. Repurposing the spaces within as community areas, she proposes a new reading room that connects 2 libraries on the southern part of the site, creating a safe place for preserving the exchange of Ukrainian knowledge and heritage. Julia drew inspiration from Ukrainian culture, and we now understand that Ukrainian patterns are regionally, they vary regionally. And so her ongoing research will be to look at those patterns for the area around Kyiv and to use those to infuse a cultural and symbolic element in the design. Jana's building could not be renovated, so she explores the site after demolition. She reimagines the tall buildings that were on the site as townhouses, creating a warm, inviting community that fosters connections with Ukrainian people. By incorporating traditional building techniques and using materials like glass blocks and ceramic tiles from the original building, it celebrates and honors Ukrainian identity. In this design, there's an opportunity for residents to personalize their homes by painting wall murals, giving them a chance to express their individuality and creating a vibrant contrast to Soviet-era structures, helping the neighbors feel more at home. The work we shared with you this evening as part of Healthy Materials Lab's 10-year pursuit to change the design and construction of building. It requires collaboration and dedication from people from a variety of backgrounds, expertise, and perspectives who believe it's possible to change the way we build for the future. We understand that we can empower and enable architects and designers to make change today if we provide them with free practice-based tools, resources, and education. Our tools and resources support our consultation towards affordable and healthy spaces, and you'll see some of our publications in the back that are all available online. We offer access to vetted collections of healthier materials and physical examples in our library on campus in New York City. To support our new EU initiative, we've also identified all of the EU-based products in our materials collection. So you can look for those by looking for the EU logo, the circle of stars. We share material research stories in our podcasts and events like this evening's upcoming March 25th. We'll be looking to the oceans for materials insights. Our work is only possible through the generosity of others, and we thank our supporters, especially to Raison for Ukraine, for our work here in Ukraine. We also ask you to support our ongoing work. You can follow the QR code to make a donation today. We invite you to see our work on social media and sign up for our updates on our website, and look for HML EU's work on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us this evening, especially to Victoria for traveling so far to be with us and for attending 6 hours of studio reviews. We leave you with the hope that peace for all Ukrainians is close, and support the long-term drive to support democracy, a challenge we also face in the US. Peace for Ukraine must be based on stability, sovereignty, and long-term security. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you. So we're happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, I had something. So there is actually a way you can help. So I have some friends in the front line, and if you are interested in taking part in projects or donating even like just a little bit, because what Ukraine needs, it's not really human resources, it's mostly money. So if you want to contribute, you can come and see me and we can discuss. I can give you contacts, if you like real contact that will go to people I know. So that's, sorry to add such a trivial, but that's for them.
If you have a question, you could come up to the microphone, and then they can people can hear you online as well. Yeah.
This is just a silly question, but could you go back to the QR code so we could scan it?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Mr. David Lewis.
Thank you for both of those talks. I want to ask you if you could put in a little bit of context, the way in which your approach to materials as a local condition is seen or potentially intended as a counter to what might be international pressure for more capitalized or imposing technologies and practices in the reconstruction. In other words, anticipating a reconstruction in which it's not locally, but it's actually projected into Ukraine.
Sorry, can you ask the question again? I'm a little bit tired, and it was not super clear for
Let
me.
me translate. I think he's saying, there's a lot of European and other investment in Ukraine, or interest in investment in Ukraine at the moment. We saw that at that event in Warsaw. And so how does that kind of investment and the kind of work that you're doing, how is that investment seen, that international investment in Ukraine and local initiatives? Is that right, David?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for this question. What I've noticed is that most of the investments are concerning like very traditional way of rebuilding, industrialized, and it's benefiting big organizations that are useful and public spaces that are useful, like reconstruction of schools. But I more and more tend to notice that people who really need to have the reconstruction, who have been like for 3 years without a roof or without windows, they're more isolated and they less benefit from this international help. So I think it would be good that the international help managed to reach those isolated population, which is more often the case with smaller NGO, which will go all the way to these villages or remote places. What I also discovered is that post-war reconstruction is a big business. I was not expecting that because I went there but it's a big business. And it's not everyone that is concerned about circularity or sustainability. But I guess it's important and it's needed, and a lot of people a lot of infrastructure need to be rebuilt. The CPVA, the Lithuanian funding agency that I'm working with, they're working a lot on anti-corruption. They're checking a lot about the fundings, and they're working a lot into they focused on reconstruction, on rebuilding schools and education. So they fund a lot of bomb shelter. They fund a lot of schools. So you will have a real diverse type of reconstruction. I'm more focusing on things that interest me. So but a lot of it is industrial. Yeah.
Hi. Victoria, you talked about using a straw material in your school project, and because of its flammability, you weren't able to use it. And you talked about lobbying to be able to use that material. I'm very curious about that. I was hoping you can talk more about that. Like why did you even consider it in the first place? Like over here, I'm very young in my career, but I feel like, you know, considering changing the rules of building isn't even a consideration over here. I'm curious why you considered that. Why do you think it didn't work out? And I guess also if it did work out, did you consider any consequences to the rule you would have changed?
So thank you. I like your question. So the rules, the building codes. So when I first started to think about the reconstruction of the school, I wanted to incorporate concrete frame structure with the rubble, like a recycled rubble, and I wanted to do the infill in straw panel. And then I read a lot of norms, and a lot of the norms were allowing for this, and I thought that it would be possible. And there was a fire expert that reverted to our architects and said that we couldn't use this straw panel because of this one norm that I saw. And my colleague Bart, who's the founder of the NeoEco Ukraine, told me that there was a potential to go up to Kiev and talk to some persons who are working with the building codes, the ministry, and also some. I met with Anna Bondar, who is an architect, but she's part of the Ukrainian government. And I presented. I made a very thorough study on the norms for bio-based materials and explaining what was the benefit on the budget for import. Trying to show them that it was not only because of sustainability, but also for economics, also for local development, to avoid to invest in new industry, because some of the materials are not available. So you need to invest in a new industry. You have to create new factories that are going to produce non-circular products, and they're going to go straight to the waste at the end of their lifespan. And she told me that there was two things that were challenging for using innovative materials in Ukraine. It was first the commissioning. At the commissioning, you need to have a certificate of the materials. So every materials you're using needs to have this certificate. So they need to pass some tests and so on. So to use, for example, clay from excavation, to use all of this, the reed and so on, would not. I could use it for the construction site, but at the end of the commissioning, there would be a problem because the materials are not certified. So that's one of the problem. And then the other problem, because the norms are not very thorough, there is a lot of gray zone in the norms, but there is this small stuff that is blocking. And then the other problem was with the the fire certificate, the fire restrictions. And for that, I wanted to, she told me that I could go talk to another woman, another person who works in the ministry, and presented my, like, hey, how can we do this? And the solutions that they told me was to do experimental permits. And they also told me, so I said, how do we change the law? And they said, well, forget about that. And so the idea was, the strategy was, and most of the time strategy is to do a pilot project to give visibility to the project, and also because for now there are straw insulated buildings in Ukraine, but it's private houses. It's very important to reach to bigger, examples. And so she said that I couldn't change the norms, but I needed to convince everybody else, the funding agency, the beneficiaries, that we need to wait and that we need to do an experimental permit, but nobody wants to wait because, and that's often the problem. I don't think it's not only in Ukraine, it's like everywhere. When you're trying to use innovative materials, it needs more time, it needs more, you need to convince more people, you need more, you need to do prototyping, you need to do more tests, you need to do lab tests and so on. And I had one positive experience when I was in Belgium, where we managed to take the time, a supplementary time, to develop these facing blocks, because we were collaborating with the norms, the institutions that were, like giving the certificate, and they said, okay, you need to comply to this norm, this norm, this norm, this norm. So we did tests and we developed the product to comply to all of these norms. But here I don't even have the chance to have this because nobody wants to wait. They want to rebuild. And at the same time, I don't think, when people have not been to school for 5 years, I don't think, I can allow, I can block the project for that. And so I think it was important to talk to even though we're not going to use them, I think it's important to say, hey, this is possible. So maybe next time, to do to take the time to do experimental permission, so we have a pilot project.
And we are doing that kind of work in the US. I mean, there are many people that are looking at, installing novel biogenic materials in the US. We worked on a project in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, with a group of people who are just looking at something that now seems fairly banal, which is kind of hemp lime insulation. And because it's not part of the code, then there are no specifications that are approved. It wasn't part of the code when we did this experimental structure. And so by doing this experimental structure and then doing the fire testing around that structure, that project was used as part of an amendment to the International Residential Code. So it's important, if you want to make progress, to kind of confront the norms, because the norms have been developed in the context of a long history of using petrochemically based products that have very specific qualities and performance characteristics. When we look at biogenic and earth-based products, they have a variation in them, so they don't conform to that standard. We don't want them in a way to conform to that standard. We want specifications so that they do have performance characteristics, but we need to contest the standards and norms, or else we'll never move forward with better building.
Thank you.
I just have an announcement to our Zoom audience that I hear there's lots of questions from the Zoom audience, but we're having some technical difficulties and we cannot see your questions from this side. So I don't think I'm on camera, but if you're in Zoom and you have questions, please email us your questions at healthymaterialslab@newschool.edu. Thank you. And now I'll hand the mic over to somebody who's here in person who might like to, I'll actually walk it over to you if you would like to answer, to have a question from your seat. Oh, perfect.
Thank you. It was really interesting to hear the parents' reaction to the beautiful windows, in the school. And, in Ukraine, a lot of folks don't actually go down to bomb shelters. There's this rule of 2 walls where people will try and find 2 walls so that if a window blows out, you have 1 extra layer of protection. Which is not always the best thing to do. So I'm curious, to what extent, do projects like this have to build around existing behaviors of people and cultures, or, maybe incentivize new behaviors like going down to the bomb shelter instead of abiding by this rule of two walls?
Well, there are some ballistic missiles that go so fast that there is no need, there is no time for air raid alert before it strikes. I think they also like have huge trauma. So we also were thinking about doing a wooden structure for the construction, but we didn't even ask because even though no matter the materials you have when you're receiving a 500-kilo rocket, nothing will resist. There is this concrete seems safe. Concrete seems to protect. Concrete seems to be like a, and also for the behavior and the but for the for I think yeah, it's also not so necessary to have so many windows. Like I know it's beautiful and so on, but I think if people are bringing their children to a school that was hit by missiles, and it makes them feel more safe that well, there is the bomb shelter, but they feel more safe that this is going to be a strong shell for their children. I understand, and it will take many years to recover from this trauma. So I was saying earlier to the students that in Finland they were invaded by the Russians during the Second War, and it was mandatory for ever since to have bomb shelters, to build with bomb shelters, and they were quite reluctant in the 90s and 2000s. They had to do it, and they were a bit reluctant. So they developed a lot of dual purpose for the bomb shelters. They were doing swimming pools, parkings, and now they're happy that they were forced to do it. And so I imagine that that's what's the the perspective. But they are going to the bomb shelters. They are used to it, and they spend the school, your education is really disrupted.
Thank you. Thank you, Victoria, for sharing your project. I'm curious in knowing what your biggest challenge was in this project.
I think what is a bit personal. I think I wanted to move there. So I moved there with my dog and my car, and I passed the border, and I went all the way to Mykolaiv, and actually like this, it was so complicated to move there. I couldn't. It was not because of the war situation. Like the war situation is really heavy to live. It's like every day, all the time, several times a day, that you have a air raid. It's totally random. You never know when it's gonna strike or not. You really take, like, I think I really learned because Ukrainian people are so careful about their community and how it's important to be, they every time something strike, they immediately think about their family, calling, everyone's all right. And I think I learned that that was so important that, I was all the way in Ukraine, but made me want to maybe like one day come back to my community and act also maybe, voilà. But I learned a lot from them and their resistance. I'm telling you, they're not going to give up. You can yeah. So the challenge, I think we have challenges in like challenge of course the board, like it's very frustrating because as I couldn't move in Ukraine, I cannot learn so I moved to Poland, but I'm not learning Ukrainian nor Russian, so it's very complicated to understand or get understood. So I think that's on that side. And then, yes, I think I was super surprised that actually the beneficiaries, the people who were going to benefit from the reconstruction, were really open to bio-based materials and sustainability and so on. But it was the normative system that is really blocking. Other challenges we have is the inflation that is huge in Ukraine. So we had a budget of 2.7 million, as I told in the beginning, but it's not enough for the reconstruction. because the inflation in 2 years was 25%. We expect another 10% this year. So, you know, how can you follow behind? There is the problem also that is coming, because for now we're still in the conception, but the problem that's coming is the actual construction. So finding teams, contractors, because most of the contractors are on the front line. So finding like a skilled worker now is super difficult. So that's a lot of these challenges. And yeah, I think also like, yes, that's, but there are many more, I think, but is it, yeah, voilà.
More questions? Is that a hand?
Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone.